Good morning, everybody, including a bunch of people that we get to work with on a normal basis that we don't always see. Really, really good to see you. I'm going to keep this pretty brief this morning, especially just because we've all been sitting on the Zoom call for 5 minutes, and that'd be weird. But welcome to AMUX. This is still our new digital approach to being able to hang out because we went a year without hanging out as a community, and we died on the inside and found a new way to try to spin it back up. So but we're really excited, like very specifically excited to have Sunday today. We've been, she can attest to this. I think I've been emailing her on some thread that's like 7 years old at this point that basically started with, please come tell us cool stuff. So we're really excited to finally make it happen and really grateful to her for being here. And I will let Sunday introduce herself and take it from here.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and inviting me. It's an honor. I'm a really big fan of Atlanta, so I also wish we were all there together in person. But maybe in 7 more years we can make that happen. So my name is Sunday Parker. I'm a blonde female in my late 20s. I'm wearing a black and white floral patterned shirt. And I'm sitting in my home office in Austin, Texas. So I've been working in digital accessibility for about 4 years. And today's talk is what I learned about user experience by taking the train. So I want to start by giving a little bit of background into who I am and what led me into a career in accessibility. So I could not decide between a photo of me on a horse and a photo of me dressed as a firefighter. So I decided to just go with both, and none of them have anything to do with the topic of today. So I was born with a rare neurological disease, and I lost my ability to walk by 9 years old and have been in a wheelchair ever since. Having a lifelong disability has profoundly shaped the way I see and move through the world, as we'll talk more in this presentation. So here's a picture from the local swimming hole in the town in Oklahoma where I grew up. So walking was always difficult, even well before age 9, but I spent all of my summers here swimming from truly sun up to sundown. In the water is where I felt truly the most free. And in this photo, you'll see a very picturesque creek with some geese, waterfalls, arched bridges surrounded by greenery, trees, and mountains. But what is not pictured here is that the majority of the town of just under 500 people was mostly inaccessible. The businesses have steps upon entry. There are very little sidewalks and no transportation whatsoever. No public transportation, I should say. Everyone was reliant on cars. So when I wasn't swimming, I was carried and driven anywhere and everywhere I needed to go. Even the house I grew up in wasn't accessible because my mom couldn't afford the costly renovations to make it so. So I learned from a very, very young age what inequality truly was, well before I even know what that word meant. I lived it every single day, and I still carry these experiences with me to this day. So fast forward, in 2009, I moved away to attend college in San Francisco. And I went from living in a town that didn't even have a single stoplight to working in the tallest building in the tech capital of the world. It was also considerably more accessible, and it allowed me to travel independently on sidewalks and with public transportation. But that freedom, came with a whole new set of challenges and barriers, trying to navigate a broken accessibility throughout the city, where I went to school, meeting up with friends, and later when I started working. But what led me to a career in technology and ultimately accessibility was my first computer. So it was donated to me from a nonprofit supporting children with disabilities. And I'll never forget how liberating it felt to talk with friends and access a whole new environment that didn't have the harsh limitations that we have in the physical world. But I later learned that not all people with disabilities have equal access to the digital environment. And while my experience with technology was one of empowerment, others were profoundly limited by it. Um, so I want to take a step back. And before me and probably many of us on this call were even born, I want to explore a little bit how we got to this point. So there's a long and rich history in the United States and globally of the disability rights movement that fought for civil rights of people with disabilities that we have today. And while we are so far away from perfect, so much progress has been made. So starting with 1970s, the Rehabilitation Act, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which allowed children with disabilities to get an education, civil rights of institutionalized persons, which included people in care homes, prisons, anyone and many of those people with disabilities who were institutionalized at that time, providing civil rights and protections under the law. And then the Voting Act of 1984. And if we continue, the Air Carrier Access Act of 1986, the Fair Housing Act later in 1988, and then one of the most landmark pieces of legislation, the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, in 1990. And I'm being a little funny here by adding myself to the timeline, but 1992 is actually when I was born. So this predates, me being here today, and 30 years have gone by now, and we're still talking about the challenges. So while there has been a whole lot of progress, the fact that we are still having this conversation about challenges and accessibility still says a lot about how far we have to go. So over the last, 3 decades, the disability rights movement has fought for access across employment, voting, transportation, education, housing, and just the sheer freedom to stay within your own community to live, as well as access to public goods and services. So in this talk, I'm sharing my experiences on public transportation and how I found the parallels to the digital environment. And if you think of your end users as passengers of your products, they are looking to be taken from point A to point Z in whatever functionality that your product has. But what happens when someone is left behind? The effects can be truly devastating. It can limit an individual's career options, their ability to access healthcare, attend social activities, and even obtain an education. This applies both to the digital and physical environment, whether a person wants to meet with friends at a bar after work or connect with them over Zoom, as we're doing today. Accessibility matters, and while the considerations between the built environment and the virtual one are significantly different, the end goal for accessibility remains the same, and we have a moral responsibility to provide an inclusive and accessible experience for everyone, regardless of whether this is in the digital environment or in the physical world. So the remainder of this talk, I'm going to walk through 10-ish user experience discoveries from taking the train. I actually think I removed one, so there should actually just be 10. And we'll start with, so bad design, and I did a strike there on often and is usually inherited. So for this, I want to shift the mindset to really be assuming that things are actually not accessible. And I know that's a a bit of a negative way to look at it, but the reality is that we are paying for the mistakes of bad design in the past. And this applies to both code and the physical world. So in a WebAIM report last year, they reported that 98% of websites have accessibility issues. And if we, compare that to something like the MTA or the New York subway, only 120 out of 470 subway stops have elevators. So, whether it's bad architecture or bad design, so much of our world is inaccessible. So as you're building products, things to keep in mind is prioritize improving accessibility no matter what, even if you are inheriting legacy code. So consider accessibility at the start of every new feature as an opportunity to bake in accessibility. And also identify where you are currently and create a plan for accessibility, and really commit to breaking the cycle of exclusion in your products, that your existing products and the products that you plan to build. Accessibility is often tacked on decades later without consideration for users. So here I have a couple of photos from the Muni Metro in San Francisco. One of them is a very, very lengthy hallway that leads to where people board the train. And what you're seeing here is the view from the elevator that is set way outside of the fare gates. And so a passenger like myself in a wheelchair gets off at the elevator and then has to make the trek down what used to be a very, very dimly lit hallway. Now it's considerably improved with better lighting based on feedback from people who were scared like myself to actually go down this hallway. But the other challenge is being located outside the fare gate makes it incredibly complicated to process your ticket. You have to go in through the emergency exit and out through the accessible gate to even process your ticket. And there is no clear signage on how you even know how to do that. So it's a lot of trial by error and figuring out how to navigate the system, because it is so different if you are taking the elevators versus just boarding as you would via the escalators or staircase. So from this, I want to reiterate that, designing with and for end users with disabilities, you may have heard the phrase nothing about us without us. And this is really about including people with disabilities throughout your research, ensuring there is a feedback loop, and really being intentional about accessibility throughout development and testing, and not just doing it as an afterthought. So another example, so storytelling can be a catalyst for awareness and change. And here I have some screenshots from my own Twitter account from FSF BART. And something I really learned in my years of living in the Bay Area is that sometimes public shaming is the most effective way to, get things done. My first year of living in San Francisco, I set up a meeting with the head of accessibility for Muni and thinking that I was going to make some big change by going in there and sharing all of my challenges. And partway through of kind of sharing all the things that I was going through, this person kind of cut me off and was like, look, I respectfully hear you, but he said, unless you have a whole lot of explosives, none of this is ever going to change. And what he was implying is that we essentially need to blow the whole system up and redo it in order to fix issues. And, I was obviously shocked by hearing that, from the head of accessibility. But it also left me feeling like, okay, well, what can we do if nothing can be changed? So I, years later, as I started working, I was sharing all of these experiences I was having, having trouble getting to work via the elevators. with my colleagues, and they were the ones who said, you need to start sharing this on Twitter. So I had probably like 10 followers for like a year, just, snapping photos of situations that were happening, and, sharing them with people. But eventually, people did start to take an interest. And I think a lot of that goes back to the fact that there was just so much lack of awareness from the general community about the challenges that exist for people with disabilities if you are not having to, take public transportation in a wheelchair. So, some of these examples were Bart replying, about station elevator attendants that were added in later due to modernization funds, and installing glass elevators to prevent people from using the elevator as a bathroom. Every time I did tweet of a um, unclean elevator, Bart was incredibly responsive about sending someone there to clean it. And also in this example, you'll see that they replaced the elevator signage to be less confusing. And in a couple slides, I'll show you what it was before. And I also found this text as I was kind of going through my Twitter that I thought was funny. It's from a friend that says, "My mom shared your write up with your first time on BART with her fourth graders, and they were shocked that people have to put up with that, and it really hit home with them." And I thought this was really interesting that a fourth grader can really understand that these challenges are real. And if someone that young can, take this in and think that this is not fair, we as adults who can actually have the power to change this should. Um, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the legal and reputational risk, but it is something to keep in mind that um, the digital space is not exempt legally, and it's increasingly becoming more evident by the decisions that are happening at the lower and higher courts. But it's also a significant reputational risk. So here's a slew of headlines. How Domino's Pizza resisted digital accessibility and lost more than just a customer. A record-breaking year for ADA and digital accessibility lawsuits. Twitter rolls out auto captions for voice tweets after accessibility backlash. A lot of this is, employers or companies that chose not to do the right thing with accessibility and ultimately faced, bad press, and still lost both in courts and in the public opinion on accessibility. So, as you're thinking about accessibility as, not just the right thing to do, it's also just a no-brainer that it's becoming non-optional. So, doing it from without having to be pushed to the point of a lawsuit, I think is, the right way to go. But of course, I'm biased there. So next, signage as well as the lack of can break accessibility. So here I have 3 photos from BART. Street elevator out of service with in a pasted on sign, some handwritten notes on where the different elevator buttons go to. And then there's another sign that says out of service, and then someone wrote in service. And it's interesting because I have been on the elevator so many times where there is someone from out of town who's asking, what does UL, what does LL, what does C stand for? And it's concourse, upper level and lower level, but what does that actually mean? Like, how do you know where that actually goes? And so it got to the point where clearly not just I was being asked so many times, but the station agent as well. So they actually went in and wrote a note saying, where things need to go. And what this really shows is that, you can design for accessibility. You can have elevators, you can have everything, you can have level boarding, but if people don't know how to actually access without proper signage and navigation, it really does, it renders accessibility pretty useless if people can't find it. So from this, document accessibility accurately and completely. You can provide end user how-to documentation, always be transparent about accessibility gaps, and include detailed accessibility specs in your design handoffs, and always message accessibility related information just as you would any other need to know documentation for your users. So separate but equal. This comes up a lot in the disability community, and I have here, separate is never truly equal. And so there is a photo from Caltrain and then from Muni of a boarding assistance area. So out of a very lengthy platform, there is only one single area where wheelchair users can board the train, and that is because it is a very manual process where someone has to pull out a lift and look for a person in a wheelchair to know if they need to board the train. So the entire time I am sitting in this like segregated little area, I'm also terrified that someone is not going to see me and I'm not going to be able to board the train because there is no other way for people to let me on the train. And so, having these alternative ways to get on the train that isn't, as any other person, it just, even though it is technically accessible, it still has a lot of barriers. And the photo on the right here is a photo of a Muni light rail train, and there is a ramp that actually turns into steps. And that's because probably more than half of the Muni stops are steps that go straight off into the street. And then they have some stops where there are separate boarding zones similar to Caltrain. And this is a huge safety issue because, these steps go down and oftentimes, there are people standing on them, causing people to trip and fall. It also makes it incredibly difficult to get on and off the train independently. I have had many occasions where the Muni drivers forget that I'm on and forget my stop. And once you pass the boarding zone, there's no way for them to reverse and let you off. So I've actually had to, go several stops past my destination just to be able to get off the train. And that's because, many of the stops that are on the street are not accessible. So you have to get to the nearest accessible stop to even be able to get off. And, there's signage like accessible boarding platform, pointing in a certain direction. All of this, really makes you feel othered whenever you're on public transportation, from my own personal experiences. So with this, as it applies to the digital environment, increasingly there have been solutions that create separate versions of an app that is an accessible version. And what that comes with a lot of challenges because, you're having to upkeep separate applications, which they never do. And, we really shouldn't be building alternative versions just for people with disabilities. And also, considering the user experience beyond just WCAG compliance, as we learned, there are examples of accessible transportation that are still not, an inclusive experience because they are, they come with significant barriers beyond just being able to get on the train. And similar to the digital environment, you can have a product that is completely WCAG accessible by, having to tab through a section on a page 15 times, which technically is accessible, but not having the proper navigation to think about the overall user experience. So inconsistencies break accessibility. Here I have a BART floor plan, and this is the new BART car design that they rolled out a few years ago. And I should have actually probably included what it was before, which was it used to be two doors, and each one of them you came in and there was a spot for a wheelchair and a spot for a bicyclist. So in the new design, there are three doors, and there are two wheelchair spots in the middle of the train, and then there are two bicyclist spots on the outer parts of the train. And so what happens is when I came onto the platform for the first time, I'm used to boarding, either door, because I know that no matter what door I go into, there is going to be an accessible spot, whether it be on the left or the right. I know there's always going to be one. But now when I board the train, I have to go to one specific door, which is really hard to find because, I have to actually count the spaces, because there are nine train cars usually for every single BART car. And I have to figure out, okay, how do I end up in the middle of the train? Because what happens is in rush hour, you have to be right at the spot where the doors open, or there is no way that myself as a wheelchair user can fit in. So I find myself having to figure out, okay, how can I be at the spot where I need to be in order to get into the doors? Whereas before, I knew that no matter what, I was always going to be at an accessible entrance. So we actually went backwards to taking a train car that, yes, it looks a lot better now, but as far as functionality and actually being able to, uh, have a consistent experience, where I'm now having to put so much thought into figuring out how I can actually get on the train, whereas before there was just no thought behind it. And it also, segregates bicyclists and wheelchair users, and I have a whole lot of opinions on this. I think I wrote a whole article I can share on how much I do not like the new BART car design, but that's a talk for another day. Um, so in the next example, designing for unintended consequences. So here, and I'm sorry, I know this is gross, some of this, but I have to share it. There is an elevator. There are two photos of elevators. One of them, and both of these are fully operational, but there is feces blocking the entrance of the door. So even though the door is working, the elevator is working, I still cannot get in this elevator without rolling over, feces, which no one's going to do that, especially if you are in a manual wheelchair and actually having to touch your wheels. So it basically, while it is accessible, it's not really accessible. And another photo is I'm actually in the elevator trying to squeeze in to avoid a pile of urine that's on the floor to be able to reach the elevator buttons. And then in the third photo, there is a BART car that is completely packed with people. And so someone who is walking up to the train can easily slip in. But for me, I don't have enough space. So during rush hour, often I would have to wait, 2 to 3 cars before I could actually get on the train. So while the train is fully accessible, if you don't have adequate space or priority access for people with disabilities to get on the train, they often won't be able to. And then in the fourth example here, there is a bicycle sitting in the wheelchair section. And what happened is this person put their bike there and then walked away. So when I got on the train, I don't know who this person was or how I could ask them to move, but I had to sit, kind of floating in the middle of the train, which is incredibly unsafe. It's also a tripping hazard for other people getting on and off the train because I wasn't able to go to the designated wheelchair section. And what I'm trying to show for all of these examples is, we can design everything to be perfect, but, environmental factors outside of our control can still break accessibility and make it incredibly difficult to be able to, use the system as it was intended. So from this, considering how accessibility can be compromised after the fact. So, depending on what kind of application you're building, ensuring that accessibility um, can't be botched by third-party developers or end users. And really that requires baking in the integrity of accessibility. And also just, making it easy, like extremely easy. Like I was building this presentation on PowerPoint, and I could not add a photo without it pushing me to add alt text. It wasn't something I enabled. It wasn't anything. It was just, and it was so seamless within the process. And that's how accessibility should be. It shouldn't be something that we have to, go into settings deep into the application and enable them. Like accessibility should be as simple as like we use spell check or, any other features and functionality. It should be really hard for people to break the accessibility or to not think about accessibility at all. But ultimately things will inevitably still break. Here is some photos of, a sidewalk closed where they completely taped off the sidewalk, and then they're pointing in the direction of using steps as the alternative access point, which of course doesn't work for a whole lot of people. There's also a screenshot of, this used to be the old way that BART would alert people that elevators were out of service, which is just send you all of the elevators in the entire system. And I would get texts. I think this all came in the matter of an hour before going to work. So I would be getting ready for work and my phone would just be constantly buzzing, and I would, like, my heart would sink, like, oh no, my elevator is out of service. And I would look, and then it's not my elevator, it's another elevator that I don't take. But later on, they eventually made it to where you could pick which elevators you want to subscribe to versus just like drinking from the fire hose of every elevator that is broken at any given time. Uh, they're also notorious for using duct tape fixes to, um, you know, uh, put temporary fixes on accessibility that end up going for years and years. And here I have a sign that says street elevator out of service. And this is at Powell Station. And me as someone who lives in San Francisco, I actually know that there are 2 elevators at this station. So if the street elevator is out of service, there is an alternative access through the mall. But if someone is coming to the station for the first time, they just think, oh, the elevator is out of service, I need to go to a whole nother station, but that's not the case. And so how this could have been improved is by letting people know, hey, like go down the hallway a little bit and take the other elevator. And oftentimes people are not thinking about those type of things. They're just saying, oh, this elevator is out of service. And so often with this like literal taped on fix, these signs tend to be out of date extremely quickly. The mass majority of elevators need to just be reset in order to get back into service. So um, uh, when they do get back into service, the sign is often still left on. So as an end user, when I see an elevator is out of service with a sign, what I do is I immediately go onto the app to like verify that that information is correct, so that I, don't just like walk away from an elevator that is fully in service. So there's like this trust issue, right, with like signage and not knowing what to expect. And from this, planning for regressions and issues that are inevitably going to be found, make sure that accessibility issues are prioritized. Avoid Band-Aid fixes like duct tape, like actually really work towards fixing for accessibility. And also providing timelines that are reliable on when users can expect a resolution. Oftentimes, the people are using applications increasingly as a core part of what they do, whether it be, in their job or banking or healthcare needs, and they need to know uh, when they can reliably know that an issue is going to be fixed. So putting a timeline or providing updates that people can stay in the loop, and making sure that those are actually, consistent and true. Don't, tape on an outdated sign of your accessibility status. And finally, this is my last example. Everyone needs accessibility, and um, I did a strike through on benefits from, and when speaking about the need for accessibility, we often mention that there are added benefits for all users. And while I totally do agree that that's true, my personal belief is that everyone at some point in their lives is going to need accessibility. I plan to put a few more images here to illustrate this, but I found this one that I thought captured just so much of what I wanted to say, which is, there's a man here in a wheelchair holding a sign that reads, "Honor Malaysia Goodson by installing elevators in the subway." And Malaysia was a 22-year-old mother who died while carrying her child and the stroller up the MTA subway stairs. And that station did not have an elevator. And had there been, she would still be here today. And in this protest that came out of this, there's a woman also in the background who her shirt reads that elevators are for everyone. And I loved that the images here were showing all of the type of people who need elevators. And this is, workers who are carrying heavy items, people traveling with heavy suitcases, children with strollers, people in wheelchairs, elderly. Truly, elevators are a universal need. So no matter if you have a temporary disability, like from an injury, or you're permanently disabled, or even if you're in a situation that we all have been in where we need elevators, it is really a universal need. So it's not about the added benefits. It is really truly that this is something we're all going to need no matter what. So I wanted to also provide some of my favorite resources if you want to learn more about accessibility. And this is a variety of different things. I try to be diverse depending on how you like to get your information. So there's a Netflix documentary about disability rights and culture. It's called Crip Camp. A Web for Everyone by Sarah Horton, which is about designing accessible user experiences. A episode 308 of a podcast, Curb Cuts by 99% Invisible. One of my favorite people, Kat Holmes, wrote a book called Mismatch, and it's about how inclusion shapes design. And then another one of my favorite people, Cordelia McGee-Tubb, is on a podcast, 13 Letters, which is hosted by Be My Eyes. And this is a podcast covering all kinds of topics across universal design, ADA, inclusivity, and digital accessibility best practices. So thank you so much. I am going to take a drink of water because I already feel like my voice is going down, but I'd love to answer any questions that you all have.
Looks like Cardin's got a hand raised.
Hey, Sunday, this is Cardin. Not really a question, more of a comment, but I just wanted to say your advocacy changed my ability to use the San Francisco BART elevators with ease. I know they're still not perfect, but I could definitely tell when I first started coming to San Francisco in 2017, starting Salesforce, and then all the way to 2020, just seeing every year it got incrementally better and better and better. And that is a huge tribute to your advocacy and the work that you've done and all your Twitters, tweets and public shaming and everything. But it really does transform the experience for others. So I just really want to say thank you for all the work that you do and continue to do. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. I also forgot I had an example from Marta that I was going to throw in and completely forgot, but I didn't have a photo of it. And it was the story of when I came for my Pardot training, how I remember we took the train one day and both doors opened on both sides of the train. And I was like, I had no idea, oh, which side do you get off? And you had to direct me to tell me, like, oh, you need to get off on this door because the elevator is on this side. And if you get off on the other one, you have to wait for the next train to go through the bridge. And I was like, wow, I would have never known that. I would have definitely gotten off at the wrong door and then just been stranded on this like floating platform. So, I mean, there are so many examples of bad design that, you know, I shouldn't say they were all made by people who are not in wheelchairs, but I'm pretty certain they were all made by people not in wheelchairs. Any other questions?
I will add, relative to some of the transit advocacy and the mention of MARTA specifically, and honestly, Carden has a lot more experience than I do here, but I have been trying to personally poke the bear of MARTA for several years because it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you knock on a front door to ask some questions and then no one is inside to answer. And it gets very confusing. Now, I've finally been able to make contact with some folks who actually work on MARTA and on the kind of communication side, and it's extremely and explicitly clear that they're underfunded, which has been a pretty common story for MARTA for a long time if you've been from Atlanta, but point being, they literally seem to not have the resources to do what actually needs to be done to create an equitable environment for everyone. So I bring that up to encourage you, if you as an individual on this call can be an advocate, can find a way to give feedback or offer help to MARTA or something like that. Try. They need help. You can reach out to me if you want, and I could try to connect you to the people that I've been able to meet. But at the end of the day, they need some assistance, and it's really going to take, like a lot of things in Atlanta, a lot of people a really long time to make some big changes. And so for folks like me who can kind of stand on the shoulders of other folks like Sunday and Carden who have given feedback to transit, we kind of all need to be doing as much as we can to advocate for that, because not only the people who built it, but the people who maintain it and make monetary decisions are not the people who need the accommodations we've talked about. So I just wanted to add that part as someone who's been very annoyed for different reasons with MARTA for a long time. It takes a lot of work. So, any other thoughts or questions? Awesome.
I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom.
Oh, go ahead, Babs.
Hey, I'll turn the camera on too. Hey, Sunday, thank you so much. I haven't gotten any questions. I just want to thank you for your presentation. It was amazing. I don't know if you would call it an autoethnography, but it reminds me of how powerful these experiences can be. So thank you for sharing it. And thank you for your, I really appreciated you two talking about like the kind of dialogue and conversation you're having with people who can make change, but don't for whatever reason. It was really surprising, of course.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thanks for listening.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks to the power of internet and computers and whatever, I guess, the versions of us in the future will be able to watch past versions of yourself on this video, thanks to modern technology. So that way we can, with Sunday's permission, we'll be checking in on that. But if we're able to post this, then we'll have that up. You can feel free to share it with other folks. And then thanks to our Slack channel and all that, if you are in the AMUX community and you've got some further questions, we can make sure that those get passed along or help you out if there are questions that we can answer so we can keep the conversation going. But overall, I think hopefully everyone would agree with this, but this is a conversation starter for a conversation that needs to be ongoing. Pretty much until we're all individually done on this earth, because it's not gonna, like, all of this work needs to get done and it's gonna take a lot of work and advocacy, and we've got to learn from folks like Sunday to figure out how to get it moving forward. So I hope that this is something we can continue to talk about and figure out how to kind of put our community on to figure out how to improve over time. Any last thoughts or questions before we go? Cool. I'll shut up then. Y'all have a great day. We'll follow up with this recording and things like that later on in the Slack channel. Otherwise, thank you so much to Sunday for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.